This is episode 28 of the Arts Academy podcast with Victor Varnado and Roxxy Haze. How to teach a project-based class with special guest SC King.
It's me, Dean Victor Varnado, Dean of the New York Alt Arts Academy, a school which I created and therefore took the top spot as Dean. Deputy Headmistress Roxxy Haze is with us today. Hey, Roxy.
Hello.
She's traveling all over the world.
Hotel room is dirty. My bad. I didn't know y'all would see all of that. Y'all be okay.
And our special guest, SC King. How's it going, SC?
Not too shabby. Thank you so much for having me.
Does the SC stand for Super Koopa? I'm sure it does.
Now, my full name is Stephen Carroll King, but as my name is Stephen King,
right.
I just avoid all of the jokes.
I have a friend whose full name is his name is Danny Glover. So, but he's not the famous one. So
I know his pain. Yes.
All right. So this first part we're going to show first part of the class we're going to have today, this episode of the podcast, is all about how to teach a project-based class. This is actually going to get pretty meta because I'm going to be teaching you how to teach. So it's definitely going to be meta. All right. So first of all, I should tell you that the whole idea of what we're going to be talking about today is just basically how to plan a class, a project-based class from beginning to end, how to break it down, and then how to execute. The goal, I would say, is that you should walk away from here being able to put a class together. Like, you'll have a clear idea in your mind about how to put a class together from beginning to end. After you choose a subject, and then you'll be able to break down and make that class happen. The reason that I am good at teaching classes is because I've been doing it for maybe 20 years. I taught acting classes, I've taught improv classes, I've taught filmmaking classes. I teach classes about a lot of different things. I actually used to teach people how to use the old Macintosh computers when they were first rolling out.
Dang, you're old. You're old.
Yeah. Anyway, I teach people a lot. And so and then with a combination of my personal preference and what I've learned over the years, that's what I'm teaching you, just how to teach. It's just I've created a very quick system for putting a class together myself. And we're going to be talking, first of all, about the structure of the whole thing. And then we're also going to be talking about how to execute. All right. So now that I've given you an overview of the class, why don't we dig right into what teaching a class is all about? There's something that I always keep in mind, and I actually say this a lot because as an artist who serves a commercial audience sometimes, this comes up a lot, like whether I'm teaching a class or making a trailer for a movie or a web series or something like that. When you are servicing a particular market, there's one thing that I always keep in mind. I know you've heard this before, Roxy, because you've been here every time that we talked about different things. But here it is. How to find your structure for the class is always anticipate the questions the students will have and answer them before they ask them. So just anticipate questions and answer them. All right, so let's talk about what that means step by step. First of all, by the way, I know that you teach too, Roxy. Mm-hmm. And you've actually been taught how to teach. Like, you didn't teach yourself.
Yeah, I hated it though.
Oh, you hated it.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Well, I hated that, not the teaching aspect, but just what I was, the school system. Don't get me started, but yeah, that's one of the things that they tell you when you're teaching, when they teach you how to teach, to make sure that you figure out what they'll need to know so that you're giving them the information, and so you're not like caught off guard while trying to teach. Because once people think you don't know what you're talking about, they kind of stop.
Oh yeah, so give up. So usually I start a class by telling the class what the class is going to cover. Now, this is actually the part where it's going to get meta, because I've already done a lot of these steps that I'm going to tell you, because I did them at the beginning of this teaching this class. So I always talk about, what does this class cover? As you remember earlier, I told you that I was going to teach you how to teach a class from beginning to end, how to strategize and then execute. All right. So we actually already did that. Then the second thing that I usually do is I talk about, I tell people what they will learn by the end of the class. We already did that too. I told you that this whole idea was to give you the tools that you need to really plan and execute a class. So that's the number 2 thing. Do you guys hear that buzzing? Is that
feedback?
Yeah, I don't know. Is that from me or someone?
I have no
idea.
I don't think it's me.
Let me check.
Yeah, I don't think it's me. I can.
I just unplugged the mic that I have over here. Do you still hear it? Is it me?
I don't hear it anymore.
Okay, maybe it was the mic that I have plugged in.
Possibly. Who knows?
Okay.
All right. And then after we talk about what people are going to learn before the end of the class, then I usually tell them why they should listen to the instructor, tell them my credentials, or talk to people about or where I get my knowledge from, because that is something that people are going to ask after you're going to tell them. After you try and tell them what they're going to learn, they're going to wonder, why should I listen to you? Mm-hmm. And then so I usually tell them why they should listen, or where the information comes from, or what its strengths are. I guess you don't really have to like list your credits, but really you do want people to have confidence in what you're teaching them. Mm-hmm. Then the next step is I do an overview of the class, something that we've already done for today's lesson, which I'll just tell people, okay, you're going to learn A, B, C, and D. I said we're going to talk about how this is going to be structured, and then we're going to talk about execution. Okay, so once you've done all of these things, like you've done your overview, you've told them who you are or where the information is coming from, so they have confidence in the information that you're teaching. You have told them what they're going to learn by the end of the class. You have told them what the class is going to cover. By the way, just to differentiate, what the class covers and what they'll be ready to do by the end of the class are 2 different things. Mm-hmm. Meaning, at the end of the class, I'm just telling you what tools are going to be in your toolbox, and what the class covers is more just like a quick overview of why you should be taking this class. And then after all that's done, then you start teaching section by section. So in this case, you've probably broken your class down into sections. I think that the easiest way to teach is to really just break the lesson down into really digestible sections. If you tell people what they're going to learn by the end of the class, then you've gotten over all of that. Why are we doing this stupid thing? Because you told them we're going to go step by step. By the end of the class, you'll know this. So then you can start by teaching them whatever you're trying to teach them step by step. I actually have one of my favorite breakdowns. I do a lot of art. If you know me, and if you don't know me, surprise, I do a lot of art. And one of the things that I really like is I really like great breakdowns of teaching different parts of drawing. And so this one instructor, his name is actually, I don't know what his name is, but I know the name of his channel on YouTube. It's called Cynic's Design. And he broke down how to draw a face in perspective better than I've ever seen it broken down before, in really bite-sized steps so that anybody can do it. Now, if you know anything about art, which I'm sure everybody has taken in one art class, you know that drawing a face in perspective is a pain in the butt. Mm-hmm. So let's just look at how he broke it down, and then we can hopefully learn about breaking down like large subjects simply. Okay, let's get this. Here we go. I'm actually going to bring us on screen too, so we can be there as well. We can all work together.
Yay.
Okay, so this is Cynic's design, and he broke down how to draw a face in perspective. If you're listening to this with just audio, I would suggest you go search for Cynic's, S-I-N-I-X design on YouTube, and then how to draw a face in perspective, and you'll get this tutorial where these images are drawn from. I'm also going to explain how he breaks it down, because it does start off rather simply. So first of all, he starts off with saying, can you draw a square like a piece of paper? And then everybody can draw a square like a piece of paper. And then goes, okay, take that square and then draw it in perspective. Now, you know that drawing a square in perspective is actually pretty easy as far as perspective goes. The next step he explains is to take that square and imagine it as a curve. So imagine it as like a curve, like a quarter of a cylinder, with the shorter edge of the square being curved. Okay? Then he says, now that you can imagine that shape, draw that shape in perspective. Okay? And so to draw just a curved piece of paper in perspective is not that hard. Okay? And then in fact, he demonstrates it. Okay, curved piece of paper already in perspective. Now, if you're looking at these images right now, you can already see how this is starting to look like a face. Or at least you can already see how this is starting to look like the perspective of a face.
I was like,
can you?
What?
Oh, watch. Okay, watch. And then he says, okay, so let's add a nose
that piece
to
of
it.
thing.
Okay.
Oh.
Right. So he puts a center line down the middle of this curve, and then he puts a nose in it and very simple eyes. And then again, you've got an image that everybody can work with. Like, it's easy to understand and easy to execute because of the steps that he took from the beginning. It's an easy to execute step. And now you're actually already drawing and thinking into perspective. Then he adds more detail with the eyes and starts adding lips and ears. And then it turns into an entire face and mask. And he takes you through this entire all these steps within like 10 or 12 minutes. It's like a very simple way, but basically it's taking something that's really, really simple and then not simple. I'm sorry. It is complex. It's taking something that is really complex and breaking it down into very simple steps, which I think is the core of teaching people well. You tell them, by the end of this, we're going to teach you how to draw a face in perspective. And you start with, let's just draw a square. If you started with let's draw a square, eventually with your students, you're going to be having the wax on, off argument that Mr. Miyagi had with Daniel's son. So you need to tell them where they're going.
I did it.
What? You did it?
Yeah. Well, I did the curved piece of paper.
You can totally do this. This is actually like totally doable. I think it's the best tutorial I've ever seen.
That's really dope.
For drawing a face in perspective, and he broke it down really well. And that's the key. Just take something complex and break it down into very simple steps. Then if this is a project, now by a project-based class, what I'm talking about is either a class where you're going to learn a skill from beginning to end, or you're actually going to finish a project from beginning to end. So in this case, the project that we're talking about is drawing a face in perspective. Even though it's actually a skill, it is a project because the project is to learn that skill in the class. However, you can also do project-based class, like a class that I'm teaching coming up, which is how to make a mini comic, is also a project. So by the end of the class, you'll have a mini comic made. Okay, so the last thing I usually do is add in a Q&A so that people can ask questions if that's available. But if not, then usually you allow your students to be able to contact you in some way. But that's pretty much it. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to quickly go over everything I talked about one last time, which is another great thing, a summary at the end of your class. So let's just talk over those things one more time, and then we're going to be done. Number one, what you want to do is you want to anticipate questions. That's how you find your structure. What's the first question people will probably have? And after And after that, what's the next question they'll probably have? That's how you find your structure. I've done a little bit of the work for you up top because I know that no matter what class you're teaching, some of the first questions they ask is, what does this class cover? That's why you start telling them that. And then they'll ask, what will I have by the end of the class? What tools will I have by the end of the class? What will I have learned? Another question that comes up is, why should I listen to you? Either tell them what your credentials are and why it's a good idea for you to teach the class, or at least where the information comes from and why they should have faith in it. Next up is giving an overview of the class. And you can say, I'm going to teach you A, B, C, and D. And those A, B, C, and D are the simple steps which teach a more complex either project or a more complex skill, but simple steps that break it down. And then one by one, teach them A, teach them B, teach them C, teach them D, and those sections can be expanded from the list that you made earlier. And at the end, a summary. That's what we're doing now. We're summarizing everything that I talked to you about earlier. Go out, teach a class, everybody. That is it. You have everything you need to plan it and to pull that
I'll give it an applause. That's that whole breakdown is way easier than how they teach you how to teach. Like,
oh yeah.
That's and it's the same thing though. Like literally, what you did is the same thing that how they teach you how to teach. But there's just so much extra terminology and stuff that they want you to do to ultimately do the same thing that you just said to do.
I actually say, and I actually think that the way that I at least am trying to teach how to teach is the difference between how most people teach drawing a face in perspective and the guy we just looked at.
Yeah,
because his is like way simpler and that anybody can understand, and everybody else is just like there's so many steps to like just getting started that it seems
it makes you not even want to do it.
Yeah, exactly. But there's nothing wrong with necessarily those other ways of teaching, but I'm just saying that if you think of a simple way to communicate a complex idea to people, that's golden.
Did you freeze? Okay.
I don't know. I can still
Oh, you're kind of breaking up.
Am I kind of breaking up? How about now? Am I better?
You're good now.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, what I'm saying is if you can think of a simple way to convey complex information, even in pieces, that's golden. That's so valuable. So anyway, that's something that I always think about when I'm trying to impart information. And hopefully everybody out there who's listening to this, you can actually find some use in it. Good luck, everybody. Teach away.
Yay. Sure, what they'll need to mention. And so you're not like most people teach, don't know talking about, they kind of.
Oh, yeah. Give up.